Thank you, Dr. Sandeep, for the very kind introduction. Thank you, Dr. Rajesh, for inviting me here. So, image optimization, I rightfully agree, is one of the most important things because at the end of the day, you have to be a good photographer. You have to learn to how to demonstrate the EOS images because if you don't, the consequences can be significant. You will either miss a diagnosis or you will make a false diagnosis. So anatomy is important, but also important how to demonstrate it on screen. So let us see if I can simplify the process. Can I have my video on, please? Thanks to SCI for choosing such an important topic of EOS image optimization for the EOS masterclass. Now, when we do EOS imaging, we basically use a B mode imaging mode, color Doppler, pulse Doppler. And today I'll be talking on image optimization, restricting myself to B mode imaging. Color Doppler and pulse Doppler are separate topics in themselves. The first and foremost is adequate lumen preparation for the EOS study. The patient must be advised an adequate fasting period. It is good to pre-medicate routinely with simethicone and N-acetylcysteine. We should wash the mucosa adequately. And a good EOS study actually may require preceding gastroscopy or sigmoidoscopy to clean the lumen and also to give you information about the luminal structures. So we must pre-wash the lumen to get good imaging on EOS studies. This is also because the standard EOS scopes have a limited suction capability. The Olympus latest UE160 radial scope has a very small channel of only 2.2 millimeters, although the Fujinon radial has a big 2.8 millimeter suction channel, allowing it some suction capabilities. Most of the linear scopes, or in fact, all of the linear scopes have suction channels or instrument channels of 3.7 to 3.8 millimeters, giving them some suction capabilities, but it is always wise to prepare the patient and the mucosa adequately before the EOS examination. We also want to prepare the EOS scope. Look at these two images where my cursor is. The suction valve cylinder of the non-EOS scope and the EOS scope show some differences. There are small suction channels and another small hole which leads to the balloon channel, which must be routinely washed and with the channel cleaning brush. They must be adequately, the debris must be removed. And also the elevator control wire channel should always be cleaned in a EOS scope. We apply balloon over the transducer routinely for all radial and linear EOS examinations to allow good acoustic coupling, as I will just explain in the coming slide. So acoustic coupling is needed because the ultrasound waves have to pass from the transducer at the edge of the scope into the across the intervening medium into the GI wall and then beyond. So if there is air between the transducer and the GI wall, it is the biggest enemy of a good EOS imaging, and the images will be grossly suboptimal. So we use two methods. One is the de-aerated water method, where we use boiled and cooled water to remove any air bubbles from the water. It is inadequate to use a tap water directly because the chlorine and other bubbles in it give a very fuzzy imaging. So a de-aerated water and sometimes distilled water are what we use to fill the lumen. The water distension method is used in capacious organs like the stomach, D2 to open up the folds and also in the rectum. The balloon method, where the balloon is filled with water and then it pushes apart the mural layer, ensuring acoustic coupling between the transducer and the wall, is used for smaller structures like the esophagus, D1 where water is not retained, and also to image the extraluminal organs. Now, we always check the image orientation. This is obvious, but should be done. In a radial scanning, a inverse image orientation can give you a lot of confusion, is perhaps only used in rectal imaging if required. Curved linear array scanning, look at the dot. This marks the cephalic end of the transducer and also the direction from which the EOS needle will appear. We optimize the processor setting in each patient. So you have prepared the mucosa, you have prepared the scope, but every patient is different from the inside. So in every patient, certain parameters are to be not corrected, optimized in real time as the imaging progresses. These include the frequency, the contrast setting, the gain, the post-processing options, and the presets which may be chosen. Now, the first and foremost is to use an appropriate ultrasound frequency. Basically, what you have to understand is that as you increase the frequency, the resolution goes up, but the penetration also goes up. So adjusting the frequency allows you to increase resolution at the expense of penetration, or increase penetration at the expense of resolution. We usually start with a low frequency, 6 or 7.5 megahertz, to get an overview and to evaluate the paraluminal structures. And we go up to 10 or 12 megahertz if we are to image the neural or the near field structures. The second thing to adjust is the contrast of the image. What is the contrast? Contrast adjusts the differences in brightness level in an ultrasound image. It is also referred to as the dynamic range in many ultrasound processors. Dynamic range is the range of grays that the image can be image displays. In general, we prefer to keep the contrast low or the dynamic range high, so that on the screen you see many gradations of gray. And the beginners normally have a tendency to increase the contrast to make the whites more white, the blacks more black, and the image look more garish or crisp, like this, what is being seen now. But you lose B mode imaging if you keep the contrast high. So keep the contrast low. The third important thing is to adjust the gain of the image. What is the gain? Gain adjusts the strength of the ultrasound signal and hence increases or decreases the brightness. So now you see the gain being brought down in this ultrasound image, and the overall, the ultrasound signal strength is going down and the image is becoming dark. We keep the gain below the noise level, and we may refer to large vessels in the field which should be completely anechoic when the gain is properly adjusted. So how to adjust the image gain? We try to get a large vessel, like say portal vein, along with the liver or the pancreas in an image, and we reduce the gain till the blood vessel and ducts appear black and the wall should appear white or hypoechoic. So we adjust gain in an image, keeping a large vessel in reference, and obviously your overall comfort with the image that is being displayed.
Very
important to adjust focus. Focusing will increase the lateral resolution by decreasing the beam waste in the focal region. So the ultrasound beam is shaped like this, and at the focal point, the ultrasound beam is the narrowest, giving you the best resolution at this point. We continuously adjust the focal point to the area of interest. Although you have the option of making multiple focal points, usually we restrict to a maximum of 1 or 2 focal points. And as I have mentioned, if you adjust the focus, it improves, not the axial, the lateral resolution of the image. There are certain presets and post-processing adjustments which you can modify during the study. The presets are actually baked in the processor, and this gives you certain predefined options which have been selected by the experts, say for GI imaging, pancreatobiliary imaging, and respiratory imaging, which gives you the optimal processor settings for imaging these structures. Post-processing adjustments include functions like enhancement or compound imaging. So what is enhancement? Enhancement is displayed on the screen by a green color beneath the frequency display. And when you increase or you get the enhancement on, it basically smoothens the image by reducing the speckle noise, and it enhances the edge of any structure. So it basically makes the image soft and well defined. The disadvantages of keeping enhancement on is decreasing of gradation and maybe over describing, but most of us keep the enhancement on when we are doing EUS imaging. What about the compound scan? Compound scan is to be used more selectively, and this displays imaging, ultrasound images obtained from different angle, say straight on, also from one side, also from another side. In the Olympus processor, there is compounding of 3 frames. So since you are merging 3 frames, the artifacts are eliminated, but also the frame rate reduces. So If you are using a moving ROI, or if your processor is moving when you have the compound scan on, you may see a stutter in the image. But if you can stabilize the transducer over structures like gallbladder and the pancreas, then transiently turning the compound scan on may be very useful to improve the image quality. This image just shows you that when the enhancement is on, you have more speckle noise. And when you have the enhancement on, you have a smoother image and the edges are enhanced more. We should also understand and utilize the ultrasound artifacts. This is very important because certain artifacts are to be eliminated and certain artifacts are to be appreciated or interpreted in a positive way. So we will be talking of shadowing, refractive artifact, increased through transmission, side lobe artifacts, and maybe reverberation artifacts as we go down. So shadowing results, shadowing is the most important artifact that the endosonographer encounters in almost every study. Shadowing is seen when a strong reflector and or attenuator happens to be in the path of the ultrasound beam. So what it means that the ultrasound beam is coming from here, it is either completely attenuated or it is reflected back, and therefore the tissues behind it appear dark compared to the tissues at the similar level in the surrounding areas. So shadowing results when there is a marked reduction in the intensity of ultrasound due to a strong reflector or an attenuator compared to the surrounding tissues. So the air bubble here seen in this image acts like a strong reflector at the interface. So all the ultrasound beam is reflected and the interface of the air bubble appears white. There is also a vibration of the interface of the air bubble itself, which leads to reverberation artifacts, which partly fills the shadowing, giving rise to a dirty shadowing, what distinguishes an air bubble from a stone. There is a similar artifact also called edge shadow or refraction artifact, which must be distinguished from an attenuation shadowing. Refraction is simply transmission of the ultrasound with a bend. This occurs when we have an oblique incidence and a different propagation speed from one media to the next. Now, when the ultrasound beam crosses across this rounded structure, it is bent by the edge of the structure and you see shadowing at the edges. And these are very commonly seen around the portal vein radicals inside the liver. The opposite of shadowing is increased through transmission or the enhancement behind cystic structures. This happens when an object like cyst attenuates the ultrasound beam less than the surrounding structures. So this is very useful to distinguish cystic structures, and as a useful ancillary clue in solid variant of serous cyst adenoma, which can sometimes appear like a completely solid lesion, and a duplication cyst, which can sometimes have hypoechoic contents and can be very difficult to distinguish from a leiomyoma. So if you see increase through transmission behind a esophageal mural lesion, it is likely to be a duplication cyst. So this is a useful artifact for us. We increase the frequency, we reduce the depth of imaging, we adjust the focus to sort of increase better demonstrate increase through transmission in such situations. Then we come to side lobe artifacts. Now, to understand side lobe artifacts, it is very important that we understand how the ultrasound beam propagates. There is a main beam which goes straight, but there is also multiple misdirected aberrant lines of ultrasound energy which are transmitted alongside the main beam. These are basically secondary projections of axis. So the main beam obviously gets reflected and is interpreted by the transducer, but the side lobes also get reflected and are interpreted by the transducer. So the information which is carried by the side lobes is placed in the path of the main beam, which means that if you are imaging a fluid-filled structure like gallbladder, all of you would have seen certain lines or echogenic falls, debris inside the fluid-filled structures. These are often side lobe artifacts or beam width artifacts, which are misplaced echogenic structures inside the fluid-filled structures. And this can lead to bad imaging and errors in interpretation. So how do you eliminate side lobe artifacts? We reposition the transducer. So if you see certain sludge, which you are not sure is a sludge in a gallbladder, you reposition the transducer, you move. And then if it is actually a side lobe artifact and not a true sludge, the image disappears. So if you look at these images, these linear lines are actually beam width artifact, and this is true sludge. We increase the frequency to narrow the beam and hence increase the lateral resolution and eliminate side lobe artifacts. We can adjust the focal point to the level where the artifact is being seen, and we can use tissue harmonic imaging, which is very useful in such situation. In my last slide, I shall just introduce the concept of utilizing tissue harmonic imaging for optimizing the EUS imaging. Now, remember that most imaging artifacts are caused by the interaction of the ultrasound beam with superficial structures. Tissue harmonics develop as the ultrasound beam goes deeper inside the tissue. So when the ultrasound beam starts from the transducer, it is symmetrical. As it propagates, it gets distorted and harmonics are generated. So harmonics are generated at a depth from the transducer. So the superficial artifacts are eliminated. This is the first point. Second point to understand is that we know that the ultrasound beam has a central beam and also side lobes. The harmonics are generated in the central beam, and therefore the scanning beam is effectively narrowed. The side lobe and the beam width artifacts are eliminated. And this is very useful, or tissue harmonic imaging is very useful for imaging fluid filled structures like gallbladder, bile duct, dilated pancreatic ducts, cystic neural structures sometimes. But this only allows you optimal imaging to a depth, and this can only be utilized not for very superficial structures and not for very deep structures. So I should like to summarize this talk, ladies and gentlemen. I hope I have explained certain concepts that all EUS studies must be optimized by lumen and equipment preparation. Each study requires fine-tuning of ultrasound parameters depending upon the imaging condition, the lesion that you are studying, and the patient habitus. Familiarity with the fundamentals of ultrasound image generation and processor functions are essential to avoid suboptimal studies. With this, I would like to thank you and would be happy to take